We're here for one reason, mainly a free Congo, right? What does that mean? Free Congo is a Congo where Congolese control their wealth, control their land, control their resources, control their affairs for the benefit of Congo in particular and for the benefit of Africa overall.
Compost and cotton and cornrows.
Welcome to the Compost, Cotton, and Cornrows podcast, and I'm your host, Dominique Drakeford. Today, I'm joined by Maurice Carney, the Executive Director of Friends of the Congo, to unpack capitalism's foundations, the silent genocide behind green tech, and why agro-liberation rooted in the Congo Basin may be our most powerful climate solution. Let's get into it. Maurice, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yes, my pleasure. It's great to be with you.
Yes, we will get into just all the layers of your global advocacy for Congolese-led movements that is centered around justice and sovereignty and sustainability. But before we dive in, it's that word, sustainability. Can you define that for me?
Sustainability, that which is in harmony and balance with all living entities and enduring, that which is organically connected. So sustainability is, I think those elements capture sustainability.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to just honestly dive right in. And,
Okay.
DRC, the Congo, has endured, in my opinion, one of the deadliest genocides that is slow and ongoing, but it is not talked about enough on a global scale. Give a macro overview of what's happening in the Congo and what your organization is doing to fight it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, not talked about much, which is true. And I think it's so critical to contextualize what is happening, contextualize it as it relates to history, as it relates to culture as a people, and certainly as it relates to what our dear sister Marimba Ani calls the Maafa. I think our journey as African people over the last half a millennia, last 500 years, if we take a cursory look at it, we see that this space called the Congo has been central to that journey. So what do I mean by that? The Europeans began the trafficking of Africans to the Americas in the early 1500s, right? And they did that trafficking of Africans for hundreds of years. Now, Emory University right there in Atlanta, they've done studies on this website. People can check it out, called Slave Voyages, slavevoyages.org. And they said almost half of the Africans that were trafficked to the Americas came out of the West Central African region, meaning the Congo region, where the Congo Empire was. So when at the very beginning, right, of the extractive process, hundreds of years of extraction of human beings, the part of the continent that paid the dearest price is that part that they call where the Congo Kingdom existed, right? So, and this extractive process was central to the development and the advancement of capitalism. If you look at Eric Williams, he has a book called Capitalism and Slavery that lays that out really well, the centrality of African labor and intellect to the advancement of the capitalist enterprise. There's a Harvard professor by the name of Sven Beckett, did a book called The Cotton Empire, The Empire of Cotton, where he makes the same argument. So in looking at when we talk about the silence, it's not just a contemporary silence or obfuscation. It's not solely contemporary, but it's also historic. Fast forward in this enterprise, right, a few hundred years, and where we see capitalism reach its industrial phase, mid to late 1800s. Here again, we see Congo playing an outsized role. In that, European powers came together in what they called the Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885 in Berlin, Germany, under the auspices of Otto von Bismarck. It is worthy to note that it was also called the Congo Conference because it was here, 1884, 1885, the Congo was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property, right? He owned it outright. They called it the Congo Free State. And he owned it from 1885 to 1908, a 23-year period. Now, during this 23-year period, the king extracted ivory and rubber. Ostensibly, particularly the rubber, power Western industries, the bicycle industry, the auto industry. And during this 23-year period, the Congolese population was decimated by half, right? It's well documented in King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. 10 million Congolese perished, right? So we hear about Hitler and his rampage in Europe, but we hardly hear about King Leopold.
We hear about King Leopold,
So,
yep.
again, the silence is not solely contemporary, but it's also historic, right? Now, what is interesting and particularly noteworthy for us, it was we who were at the forefront of challenging the king. That is to say, Congolese and people of African ancestry, right? You had Black folks here in the United States who went to the Congo, documenting what was unfolding. There's a husband and wife team by William Shepard and Lucy Gant. They were Presbyterian ministries. They documented what was unfolding in the Congo and made it available to the world. The atrocities were being committed. The hands were being chopped off. The children that were being kidnapped and held as ransom for against families unless they deliver a certain quota of rubber. But there's one particularly noteworthy individual who, you know, who crossed borders, let's say, across continent, by the name of George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams is often referred to as the first African-American historian of note. But he's also a Civil War hero who fought in the Civil War in the United States. After the Civil War, he served as an elected official in Ohio, went to Howard University and other universities in the Northeast. He was a really noteworthy figure. So he wanted to find out if what the king was saying about the Congo was actually true. Because King Leopold II of Belgium was saying he was on a civilizing mission, right? And that's in alignment with the colonial rationale, right? Remember the 3 C's of colonialism that the colonialists argue. They say, well, we're going to civilize the Africans. We're going to bring Christianity, to the heathens. And we're going to bring commerce, right? So these are the 3 C's of colonialism. So the civilizing argument that the king made, George Washington Williams said, we're going to test it. Right? So in 1890, he went to the Congo to see what was unfolding there. What George Washington Williams came away saying was, what I've observed is tantamount to crimes against humanity, right? In a letter that he wrote to King Leopold II of Belgium. Well, and you had figures like Booker T. Washington, who joined a movement to take Congo away from the king, called the Congo Reform Association, that was initiated by 2 folks out of Britain, out of Europe, Roger Casement and Ed Morel. And there's a book that Red Rubber that documents their work. It was a global movement to get the Congo away from the king. Booker T. Washington was a part of it. He wrote a really interesting piece entitled Cruelty in the Congo. So you had Booker T. Washington, George Washington Williams, William Shepard, all these figures. Even Mark Twain took up the cause, right? He wrote a piece called King Leopold's Soliloquy. It was Black folks who were leading this charge, anti-colonial, anti-imperialist charge to get Congo away from the king. Overall effort was successful. This is important to an element of this that we see that endure to this very day. The movement to take Congo away from King Leopold II had a brutal rule, was successful, right? In that, it got the Congo away from the king, but it turned it over to the Belgian state, right? It didn't turn it over to the Congolese people. So this struggle on the part of the Congolese people to recapture their land, to recapture their resources, to recapture their own affairs has been an ongoing battle for some time. And it's central to what we see unfolding today. Why do I say that? Because in the 1960s, or 1960 exactly, Congolese got their independence. And they say, okay, we got our independence, and they elected a leader of their choice in Patrice Lumumba, right? And Lumumba, keenly aware of Congo's history, of course, uh, African nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. He got his Pan-African credentials, so to speak, when he participated in an All-African People's Conference, 1958, in Accra, Ghana. He had the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, he had the likes of Frantz Fanon, major figures. You have the likes of George Padmore, Ras McConnell, major figures who participated in the 1945 Manchester conference in England. Pan-African conference in England. And this radicalized Lumumba. This really branded his, or laid down his path to Pan-Africanism. So he said, okay, we have our independence. What we're going to do, we're going to take this wealth that's in the Congo, the wealth that the European geologists said was a geological scandal in the early 20th century because there's so much wealth packed into one area. And we're going to utilize this wealth for the benefit of our people, right? And in particular, and Africa in general. So this didn't sit well with the Western powers, right? Because they needed Congo's resources. What you see, recall the trajectory, the human resources, indispensable to power in capitalism, right? Under the slavery system. The natural resources, vital for powering industries, right? The rubber that was needed for the auto industry. Even advances in technology like atomic weapons, the uranium needed for that came out of the Congo under Belgian colonialism, right? So you see the industrial diamonds, key for heavy industry during World War II, the copper, vital for the bullets that were used in World War I. So you see that Lumumba coming in and saying that we're going to take all of this for Africans, that represents an immediate threat to Western hegemony, right? To Western war machine, right? To Western security interests. So what happened? The United States mounted the largest covert action in the world, right? In the 1960s to overthrow Patrice Lumumba. And they were successful. The head of the CIA, his name is Larry Devlin, the chief of station. He wrote a book, Chief of Station Congo. Interestingly enough, Dominique, in that book, he said, we had to overthrow Lumumba, right? Because if we didn't overthrow Lumumba, not only would we have lost the Congo, we would have lost all of Africa, right? So we see the centrality of Congo to the future of the African continent. And it's recognized and acknowledged by the enemies of Africa to the point where they'll mount the largest covert action in the world to overthrow this democratically elected leader, right? Now, this didn't stand without resistance because on the other side, you had the Africans, the independence figures that were keenly aware of the centrality of Congo to the future of Africa. So Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré, Modibo Keita, who formed the early Pan-African Union, similar to what we see forming today in the Alliance of Sahel States, with Chiani, Niger, Goita in Mali, and Traoré in Burkina Faso, right? You had a radical edge in the 1960s. So what they did, they came together and they said, Congo is central to the future of this Pan-African project of the United States of Africa. So we're going to dispatch emissaries to go work with Lumumba. So they sent the likes of Felix Moumer of Cameroon and her remarkable Pan-African sister by the name of Audrey Blouin. She was sent to work with Lumumba as well. She became his speechwriter and chief of protocol. So you had a Pan-African rallying behind the Congo. Lumumba, and Nkrumah documents it well in the book, his book, The Challenge of Congo, where they saw Congo serving as a capital of the United States of Africa. So you see the central role from the early 1500s right up to today that Congo plays in the African world, right? And you see the understanding of both the enemies and friends of Africa, that Congo is central, indispensable to the future of the African continent, right? Even the internationalists like Che Guevara, who went to the Congo in 1965, in his book, the book that was written, the Diaries of Che, he said that Congo was in the front lines of the battle against colonialism. The extent to which Congo will be successful is the same extent to which a continent will be successful. The extent to which Congo will be unsuccessful is the same extent to which a continent will be unsuccessful. So it's undeniable the centrality of Congo to the future of the African continent. But I'll leave it there. I don't know. That's the first question, so I don't want to just make this a speech.
No. I mean, you gave very critical context and history that I I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the average person does not know. Even folks in the advocacy space, especially in the environmental advocacy space. Just touching a little bit more on Patrice, just for a second, because he is literally Lumumba. I mean, just as the first democratically elected prime minister of the Congo. He was one of the most important Pan-African leaders of the 20th century, and people just don't know. And then the piece you said about why don't we hear about King Leopold, but we hear about Hitler, right? We don't know that King Leopold was responsible for the deaths and the mutilation and the forced labor of millions of Congolese, let alone extraction of resources. And this is infrastructurally, it was just important for you to set the stage for this level of colonization that continues to be absent. And I love how you centralize Congo as the root of colonization, but also an important and pivotal source for the vitality of Africa and, just the level of resources that they have. Hi, baby. Morning, mama. Can you close the door? Thank you. That's the 2-year-old.
Beautiful.
And so when we're looking at where we are now, when we're looking at nearly 70% of the world's cobalt coming from the Congo, right? During this so-called clean energy movement.
Mm.
We're looking at and not only cobalt, coltan, copper, gold, all the things. What do you make of the extraction of Congolese labor and the extraction of cobalt for a green economy, for a energy efficient economy, for a sustainable development revolution, if you will?
Yeah, that's it's fascinating
Mhm.
the extent to which uh, the space in the heart of the African continent
Mhm.
is so central to these dominant questions of our
Mhm.
time, right? And two dominant questions or phenomena that are interlinked and connected are, on the one hand, combating the climate crisis or the climate emergency, right? And then in an effort to mitigate that climate crisis, we talk about a green energy transition, right? And in a lot of respects, Congo sits at the nexus of that. When I say that, well, Congo is a part of the second largest rainforest in the world, right? It's off the Congo Basin, right? It's often referred to as the second lung of the world behind the Amazon. Okay? Noteworthy, however, is that Congo sequesters more carbon than the Amazon and Borneo combined, right? And it's also home to the largest tropical peatlands. The peatlands is an area the size of England in the Congo Basin, where sediment foliage has accumulated over thousands of years, and it traps carbon in the soil. If that carbon is released into the atmosphere, it would produce about 20 years of pollution that we get from burning of fossil fuels in the United States. So it's a global patrimony that must be protected. And the main people responsible for the protection of that patrimony are the indigenous Congolese people themselves, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the Congo Basin,
Mhm.
where we see Congo is central to combating this climate crisis, the climate emergency. Now, what scientists are saying, well, if we phase out fossil fuels, right, and we enter into a green energy transition, a transition that is battery powered, right, whether it's a battery for electric vehicles, the battery in the power packs for the solar panels and the wind turbines, right? We see Congo playing a central role again because a key ingredient in battery is a mineral called cobalt. And Congo produces up to 75% of the world's cobalt. That is to say, if you were to add up all of the countries in the world that produce cobalt, they wouldn't equal what Congo produces. In fact, the type of
Real
cobalt
life
that's produced.
vibranium.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's just one,
Mhm,
right? Because Congo has
mhm,
metals or minerals for almost all the elements on the periodic chart, right? So there's cobalt, and there are two forms of production of cobalt. One is industrialized or mechanized, and one is non-mechanized, right? Informal. If you were to just take the informal production of cobalt, that's where cobalt is produced by hand and rudimentary tools. They'd be the second largest producers of cobalt in the world, right? So we see the centrality of Congo's rainforest and Congo's minerals, in this case, cobalt. I mean, we haven't talked about the copper, we haven't talked about the lithium and all of the nickel, all the other key minerals that Congo has. So uh, when we look at uh, dominant, these two dominant phenomena of our time, we have to speak about the Congo. However, when people are engaged in the climate um, advocacy or climate justice movement, Congo is rarely mentioned. I'll give you an example of how that is played out. We see here in the United States, under the Biden administration, they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, they call it, say one of the largest climate bills in the history of the United States, and which central to it is putting resources into electric vehicles and green energy transition, right? So naturally, the folks in Detroit, the big three automakers, they had concerns about their workers. They're like, if we're making this transition from combustion engine, right, which is what Detroit was built on, right, to electric vehicle, what's going to happen to our workers? So the United Auto Workers, labor union, and the climate justice groups like major climate justice groups like 350.org and the Sierra Club, they all rallied together to say, hey, let's mobilize to ensure that the workers in Detroit are protected during this energy transition. Now, what we've made the argument to them, or attempted to in any case, listen, these are workers at the top of the supply chain. Now, they're also workers at the bottom of the supply chain, without which there wouldn't be any top, right? And those are the workers in the mines in the Congo. So if we're going to talk about protecting the workers, then we have to protect the workers from the top of the supply chain to the bottom of the supply chain. So at the very least, they have to be in your scope in terms of your narrative, in terms of your discourse, and certainly in terms of your policy. So that's the argument that we make to bring Congo into the discussion uh, that is commensurate, right, to the importance of the country to how the planet is moving, adding the climate crisis, energy transition, right? Advances in technology, artificial intelligence. You cannot talk about artificial intelligence, advances in technology without talking about the Congo and its workers. So that's the push that we're making as an organization, Friends of the Congo, that we have to have a holistic view in discussing technological advances, in discussing the well-being of the planet. All of that needs to take into consideration what's happening with indigenous communities in the Congo Basin rainforest, what's happening with informal workers at the bottom of the copper and cobalt mines in the Congo, in order for us to say that we're moving forward as a people, as a human race, as the advocates and the scientists and specialists put, the analysts put, put forward.
Mm. So, Maurice, how can we reconcile that very stark contradiction? Like, what does a truly ethical transition look like from the Congolese perspective?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question.
Yes, of course.
We're a Pan-African Solidarity Institution, and we work in collaboration partnership with frontline organizers and communities in the Congo under the umbrella called Basanja. That's a Basandja, Basanja Coalition. And a coalition of organizations have been organizing on the front lines of the conflict in the east of the country, the front lines of the rainforest in the north of the country and in the west where the peatlands are, and the front lines of the mines. And a part of the undertaking of Basanja, right, is the narrative, conveying the narrative about Congo in particular, but also Africa in general. We've talked a lot about the colonial legacy, right? Fundamental element of the colonial legacy that contributes to that silence that you introduced at the start of our discussion is the colonial gaze, right? What is this colonial gaze? That is to say that with the colonial legacy comes colonial gaze. And central to that colonial gaze is this notion, this ill-conceived notion that Africa is a dark continent, right? And then Congo, a la Joseph Conrad, is the heart of darkness, right? That means what happens there, right, is a result of these atavistic qualities, these subhuman entities are imbued with that condemns them to perpetual violence. So the Congo has experienced the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II, where at least 6 million people have perished. Okay, we don't have to pay much attention to it because that's normalized, right? That's what Africans do. That's what the people in the dark continent do. That's what people in the heart of darkness do, right? So it erases, right, the people and the what they have to contribute, not only to Congo and Africa, but to world cultures and civilization, what they have contributed. So what the Basanta Coalition has been doing has been deeply engaged in knowledge production to valorize the wisdom and the knowledge that exists among indigenous communities in the heart of the African continent, right? Basanja itself is a code of ethic that the Topoke people in the rainforest of the Congo uh, you know, gave to the Congo and to the world that says it's a code of ethic that governs how human beings live in harmony and balance with all living entities. Right? That is a basic respect for the environment, right? For the animals, right? And do not place one above the other or see the environment as a space to exploit for profit, right? Which is what capitalism engages the environment. So through films, through books, through articles, the Basanja Coalition is sharing with the world, right, what Congo has to offer. And they're coming from a perspective of agro-liberation, right, a la Amilcar Cabral, where they're saying to the Congolese, and saying to the Congolese people in particular, we have to decolonize the Congolese mind, return to the source. The answers to the challenges we face are found in our soil. They're found in the trees. They're found in our culture. They're found in our mores and our practices as a people. And they're grounded in in that foundation. One of the members of the coalition is the Mbuti people, or they call them the Twa or the Pygmy, and they have this principle of hapa hapa, right here, right now. This is where the answers are, right? Uh, so the Basanta Coalition is articulating that agro-liberation perspective and proffering that as a way out, right, for Congolese peoples. That's the path in which they're pursuing, that they're going forward on, that we're supporting. And they have films that are out, books that are out, that people go to their website, basanja.org, or go to freecongo.org, and they'll be able to access those resources. And those resources are critical because they help us with a narrative around the Congo, which is what we've been discussing. And not
Mm,
just Congo, narrative around the Congo and Africa in general. And a fundamental part of that narrative, Dominique, is that there's agency taking place. Of
mm,
course, there's the exploitation, the mining companies and the foreign governments and corporations and all. But Congolese people are resisting. Congolese people are movement building. Congolese people are organizing. And if people take nothing else away from what I share on you this interview today, take away that people are moving and they're building, they're organizing. They're not just sitting still to
right.
be victims of this colonial enterprise or this neo-colonial undertaking or this capitalist and imperialist system. And what they're saying is like, join us in this undertaking, join us in this movement building, in the spirit of Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba, before he was assassinated, wrote his last letter to his wife, Pauline. And in that letter, he said to the Congolese people, he said, we're not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world be found by the side of the Congolese. So that's the appeal that we make to people, and as from Friends of the Congo, to be found by the side of the Congolese in the spirit of Patrice Lumumba.
Mm. I'm going to hold agro-liberation close to the chest. I've never heard that term before. Um, I often say eco-reparations, but
Mm,
agro-liberation um, centers the sustainability expertise of the people, which I love.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um,
And that's coming in a broader intellectual sense. That's the African version of decolonization. Right?
mm,
That's
yes.
grounded in the practices of Amilcar Cabral, right?
Mm,
In the Cabral was he was an agronomist himself. That was you know, his vocation, right? And he, organized, the people in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde
mhm,
around this principle agro-liberation, where you return to the source. Your liberation comes from the soil, not only in terms of food security, but also in terms of your knowledge base and how you view the world. That you not looking to Europe for answers. You're not looking outside of Africa for answers, but the answers are right there in your heritage, in your culture, right there in the soil, right there in the trees, right there in the leaves, right? So
yeah.
that's the principle that the Basanja Coalition has adapted and carrying out throughout the Congo.
Yeah. I do want to, and thank you for that, Maurice. I do want to sort of end the conversation on what accountability and global responsibility looks like, especially on a consumer and activist level. But you lifted up something in the movement building space that I've been thinking of, and I want to be mindful how I articulate this because I don't want to compare genocides, but I think that there needs to be a conversation in terms of narrative and storytelling and just how the realities are perceived. I find it very, very interesting that when we look at what's happening in Palestine and there is this ability to storytell on phones so that the world can see not only the atrocities, but also the beautiful movement building leadership fight resistance that's happening amongst the Palestinian folks, right? So
Yes.
when I think about what's happening in the Congo, there is not much storytelling, truth telling that can be shared on the phone because they're mining the materials to make the phone, let alone the powerful local movement and community strategies that are taking place. So both of
Mhm.
those pieces. I'm not we're not seeing the truth the way we can see the truth of what's happening in Palestine, which I mean,
Mhm.
it's your nervous system. Like
Mhm.
not to say that I need to see the truth in HD 24/7 of what's happening, but I think that there is an interesting invisibility that
Mhm.
happens. And so cognitively, our moral compass of what's happening, we're so far removed. And so the
Mhm.
only time we have a glimpse of what's happening is when there's interviews like this, or if
Mhm.
you have the fortitude to go out and dig and do your research because it's
Mhm.
not readily available. What are
Right.
your thoughts on that? Without,
Yeah,
digging
yeah.
too.
No, I have so much to say about it without
I
keeping
was gonna say,
reading.
I feel like you got a dissertation on that one, but
Yeah, I'm
I
definitely,
just felt like in my spirit, I've been thinking about this
mm,
for so long, and
yeah.
what are
Well,
your
we need
thoughts
to
on
do an
this?
entire show on that, because there's so much to unpack in it.
Yes.
Because a part of it, well, Palestine is dramatic, right? Uh, to the extent that Congo isn't, right?
Mhm.
Congo is like, you know, 3 decades, right?
It's a
Of
slower,
it's
right.
slower, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then, the enemy is readily identifiable, right?
Right.
When it
Oh,
comes to
oh,
Palestine.
Maurice, not to cut you off. The other
Yes.
piece is that sometimes when we do see what's happening in the condo, it becomes easy to dismiss because we see another Black person, another
Oh yeah.
of African diaspora, a militia doing
Yes.
the
Yes.
enslavement.
Yes.
So that's the
Yes.
other piece that
That's
I
the
think becomes
other piece
critical
is
in
what,
storytelling. So
yeah,
sorry to cut you off.
no, 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 we've been organizing for a quarter century around the Congo, right? And that's
Mhm.
uh, the the biggest challenge because when you see that, then you have to go into layers. Just take that piece, another Black person, right?
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
you need a theoretical framing to understand it, right?
Mhm.
And you have to go to like Kwame Nkrumah, right? Where he talks about neocolonialism and the
Mhm.
theory of neocolonialism, right? He talks about the neocolonialism. He has this remarkable book, the latest stage of imperialism, right?
Mhm.
And that helps to explain that when you see another Black person engaged in practices that either unalive or oppress
Mhm.
another Black person. Automatically you see there are layers. Where in Palestine there are not as many layers. It's clear that Israel is
Clear.
the perpetrator, right?
Yep.
It's clear that Israel couldn't do what it's doing, the genocide is committing without our tax dollars, right, from the
Exactly.
United
Clear.
States. So that's
Yep.
very easy to understand
Yep.
and very easy to say, okay, then we got to stop the U.S. We got to stop Israel. We got to get on a boat and we got to break, right, the blockade, right? So very actionable, clear things that you have to do. Where in Congo, it's layered,
It's complex. Yeah.
where Congo is suffering the same atrocities and genocide that Israel is suffering, right? But then you have a Congolese president that just invited the Israeli president to Congo and said to the Israeli president, we're calling for peace for Israel, right? So, so you have so many elements that you have to deal with in the Congo in order to understand what the prescriptions are and what the solutions are. So, and that's what the Basanja Coalition is working on to try and get the word out. So, for like you, Dominique, and others in your space, is to provide a platform for those who are on the vanguard, right? Who the leading edge of movement building in the Congo to get the word out, to get the narrative out, because there are so many layers to the Congo, but what is the dominant ones, the ones that matter? And I'm going to share this with you. The the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, before he became Secretary General, he gave an interview to the Financial Times. It was around 2008 or so, and he said, Nick, that let us not forget. the international community has systematically looted the Congo. The international community has systematically looted the Congo. And he could have added for the last 125 years at that point. Well, that's fundamental for us to understand that we're talking about a space in the heart of the African continent that is being systematically looted, right? And a clear example of that, especially for those who are organizing around Palestine, is we have 70 million of the 110 million Congolese living on less than $2.15 a day in a country economists say has got $24 trillion worth of wealth, equivalent to the GDP of the United States. 70 million Congolese, less than $2.15 a day. And then that's on one hand. On the other hand, you have one Israeli billionaire by the name of Dan Gertler, right? Through corrupt practices, according to the United States, who's got him on the sanctions list, is making $200,000 a day in royalties from mining concessions that he has in the Congo. So that's a space that's being systematically looted. It's not Dan Gertler. It's companies up and down the supply chain, from Apple right down to Glencore, Tesla, right down to Ivanhoe Mines, right? So what we have to say as African people, people of goodwill, people of conscience, is that we're not going to normalize this, that we're going to do everything in our power not to go on as if it's okay for 70 million people to live on less than $2.15 a day, as if it's okay for 7 million Congolese to be internally displaced, as if it's okay for hundreds of thousands of Congolese women to be systematically raped so that people can get access to mineral riches, as if it's okay for 6 million at least Congolese to perish in the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. We have to make that commitment to say we're not going to normalize it, right? And we do that by certainly talking about it, certainly spreading the word, but we also have to be responsible in the sense that we want to hear what these voices are saying, the narrative, right? Understand the narrative around it, that they're trapped in this colonial system, this neo-colonial system, but they're resisting, right? And we can play a role as good, strong allies in solidarity with them in their effort to resist, and understand that the aim of the Congo is what Patrice Lumumba laid out in the Congolese when he formed his political party in 1958. He said, comrades, we're here. We're here for one reason, mainly, a free Congo, right? What does that mean? Free Congo is a Congo where Congolese control their wealth, control their land, control their resources, control their affairs for the benefit of Congo in particular and for the benefit of Africa overall, right? So that's what we're asking people to lock into. And in a very forward-looking way, and certainly understanding the dynamics, the major global dynamics that are at play. And I've said they've been at play for the last, half a millennia, which is a concern, not just of Congolese, but people of African ancestry in particular.
Yeah, thank you for that, Maurice. And to just close this loop, in my opinion, the green economy, it can't be called green if it's built on Black death and stolen land and unprotected African labor. However, I am very cognizant that we are all complicit. I'm on my laptop. I've had partnerships with tech companies that I'm sure aided in this, genocide. We are all complicit. And I'm not going to be on my high horse and act like I've been perfect in my advocacy for this, but I want to know what's one thing that everyday consumers or activists or, Black diasporic communities, what's one thing that, where can we start? Like, do I toss my laptop out the window? Do I
No, you
toss my
definitely
phone?
don't. You definitely don't. No,
Where can we
not
start?
even,
Because it's
not
so
even.
dynamic, it's so layered, but
Okay,
to
right.
me, it feels so apparent.
Right. So you have your laptop, you have your phone, use them. Use them to learn. Use them to inquire. That's the first thing we share with people. You use them to get access to information. If you feel guilty, go find out about what's happening in the Congo, right? Use the phone, use a laptop, right? That's what, there's this young lady, she works with women who have been victims of of rape. Her name is Annie Modi. She's part of a group called Collective Women called Synergie des Femmes. And she was presenting to the students at Spelman, the women at Spelman. They said, what can we do with it? She says, use your tools that you have in order to support the Congolese. Use the tools to learn. Use those tools to spread the word. Use those tools to organize. Use those tools to mobilize, right? Even if you use them to mobilize against the companies to put pressure on them, right? But use them to the benefit of the people. Now, there's a larger question that doesn't necessarily have to be lodged in the Congo itself. Some people say, okay, I'm going to stop vaping. Okay, I'm going to refurbish, go use refurbished phone. Okay, I'm going to boycott Apple.
Heard the refurbished phone a lot.
I'm going to share that with that. There's some bad news. That's not going to do anything to address the issue in the Congo. I'm not saying don't do it, but don't do it because you think you're going to end something in the Congo. That's not the path, right? Do it because you're going to not engage in conspicuous consumption for yourself and for the people. Do it because you may be on a path to the degrowth movement, right? Those are the rationales for doing those things, not because you're going to end the conflict in the Congo, the genocide in the Congo. We have prescriptions for that, right? That we can share with you. We tell people, go to freecongo.org. The moment you get on that page, you see a list of things that you can do that can contribute to ending what's happening in the Congo and support Congolese who are organizing movement building on the front lines. So use those tools in order to learn, in order to elevate, in order to share the word, in order to elevate and amplify the narrative coming out of the Congo, like of the Bassandra Coalition. If you do those three things, that's already a big deal. And if you want to take it further, you can use them to organize, you can use them to mobilize, you can use them to fundraise, right? And you can even go to the level where you can join the movement and even wind up in the Congo, seeing for yourself what's unfolding, come back fortified to be a stronger ally and be firmer in your solidarity with the Congolese people. So there's a very clear path, steps that people can take. And we always encourage people, go to freecongo.org and you'll be able to follow those steps.
Maurice, thank you so much for this conversation. Folks don't know I had to track him down. I had to track him down so we could have this conversation. He's so busy doing liberation work. You said what?
That will not happen again. Well, right.
We're linked now. We're linked.
Good.
But no, just thank you for your history, just your brilliance and the advocacy work that you're doing to share how Congo is the epicenter of honestly the universe, clearly, but also environmental stewardship and just what we can do to create Congolese sovereignty or help amplify Congolese sovereignty and liberation. So just thank you for your relentless voice in this space. And I'm so excited to share this as an important environmental justice conversation that is not had in my space. It's really not. Like in the environmental justice space, folks are not talking about the Congo.
My goodness.
Especially around tech and AI, because that's the big conversation. So how can we balance the evolution of tech and AI with the realities of what's going on in the Congo? Both conversations have to happen simultaneously.
Absolutely.
And so I'm excited to share this with the people, for the people, and for the globe, right? It's for us, by us, but also everybody is affected. The entire world is affected. So I'm beyond grateful.
Well, Fanon said it best. I don't think he fully understood the scope of his prognostication, but he said, in his book Toward African Revolution, let us not forget the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo.
Yeah.
So he nailed it.
Yep, 100%, 100%. I hope y'all are going to tap into all the resources, the books, the quotes, the people Maurice lifted up so that we can begin to do some digging and some research. This was an introduction conversation.
Yes.
But Maurice, to close out this episode, I am doing something this season called the Sustainability Soundtrack. And so I'm going to give you 3 rapid fire questions to answer. Okay?
One word answer it?
What? Yeah, one word answers, unless you feel like you need to expound on it, which folks have.
Okay.
But it should be a one word answer.
Okay.
Okay. What song is bringing you joy?
Ooh,
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that,
song
huh?
is bringing me joy. A song by a young Congolese. His name is Passy Bass, and he has a song that said, "If Lumumba was alive, or if Lumumba was here, what would we be doing?" That brings me a great deal of joy. There's several of his songs, but that Passy Bass, "If Lumumba were here," that brings me great joy.
I cannot wait to listen. I'm actually creating a soundtrack from everybody's answers,
Oh,
hence
okay. Well,
sustainability
he just
soundtrack.
dropped his
So,
albums.
okay.
Make it
Oh, I'm
available.
so excited. I
Yes.
cannot wait to listen. Okay. Second question. What song brings you healing when you are going through a challenging time?
Sound that brings me healing when they're going through a challenging time. Jill Scott really lifts me up. Golden.
Ooh!
Golden. Me and my daughter is 6 years old, and she loves that song. We sing it all the time.
Oh,
So
is
that
that who was
definitely
in the
lifts me.
background earlier?
Yes,
Oh, the
yes, yes.
baby.
So she loves Jill Scott. I love Jill Scott.
I love this.
And
Come
Golden
on,
is
Auntie
it.
Jill.
Yeah, we get hyped when Golden. when we
Hey,
sing
I love
it. Okay.
this. Come on,
Yeah,
daddy-daughter moment.
yeah.
And then the last question is, what song sounds like sustainability?
What song sounds like sustainability? That's a good one. You got me on that one.
I know.
I bet that's the
This is the
toughest one for
kicker.
everybody,
This is the
right?
kicker.
Right. Um, yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. That's a tough one. The song that sounds like sustainability, I'm going to say, uh, the, hey, I don't know. That's a tough one. Okay, Marvin Gaye, "What's Going On?"
What's
I
going
love,
on? Great.
yeah,
Great
I'd say
answer.
Marvin Gaye,
Great
"What's
answer.
Going On?"
That's a great
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Perfect.
That sounds
Perfect.
like sustainability.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much, Maurice. And how can folks stay connected with you and or the organization, whichever?
freecongo.org. We tell everybody go to freecongo.org and they'll be
Perfect.
connected. They'll be plugged in.
Perfect.
And hit
All
us up on
right.
our socials. We're at Congo Friends,
At Congo Friends.
IG, Facebook, X, at Congo Friends.
And continue to amplify what they're sharing on socials. I reshare it quite a
Absolutely.
bit. So do that. All right, y'all. That's a wrap. If this conversation moved you, don't sit with it alone. Share this episode, keep learning, and choose to be found by the side of Congolese people. See you next time.
Composting cotton and cornrows.
We've turned nothing to gold since the birth of our soul. It's ingrained in our root. Black is more than flesh and bone, planted deep in our code, and we bear the fruit. Yeah, they wonder how our stride's so bold, and our pride stone cold after all we've been through. Rich as the texture of our crown, crown, crown. We pass it on to the youth.